The year was 1994, deep in Spain's Atapuerca mountains. Aurora Martin Frances lifted a small skull fragment from level TD6 at Gran Dolina, expecting another routine find. Animal bones and stone tools were common here, the usual archaeological bread and butter. But this bone was different. Human, young, based on tooth development, maybe 6 or 7 years old when they died. Carved across the surface were parallel scratches, too regular for accidents, too deliberate for natural damage. Cut marks, made by stone tools, excavations uncovered, remains from at least 11 individuals. Nearly a third of the 288 fragments showed identical damage patterns. Systematic butchery marks, marrow extraction, skulls opened for brain access. Evidence usually found on mammoths, not children. At first, skepticism ran high. Was it mortuary practice? Ritual defleshing? Anything to explain the chilling reality. But the forensic evidence was undeniable. The cuts followed a predictable pattern. Bones cracked for marrow, skulls smashed for brain tissue. By now, you might be asking yourself how any species could hunt its own kind with such chillingly precise calculation. Meet the species behind our story, not the victims at Gran Dolina, but their close descendants who would perfect the art of hunting both animals and humans. Homo heidelbergensis. Forget the stooped museum displays of primitive brutes. These weren't knuckle-dragging cavemen stumbling through prehistory. H. heidelbergensis stood tall, males often reaching 5 feet 9 inches, or 175 centimeters or more. Robust builds, heavy brow ridges, faces that would turn heads on a modern subway. But here's what should make you pause. Their brains were as large as ours, sometimes larger. The average H. heidelbergensis cranium held about 1,200 cubic centimeters of processing power, smack in the middle of the modern human range. Whatever was happening inside those skulls wasn't limited by hardware, and they knew how to use those brains. Their toolkit represents a massive leap. Where Homo erectus made functional but rough implements, H. heidelbergensis crafted objects approaching artistic precision. Their Herculean hand axes weren't just sharp, they were symmetrical, balanced, aesthetically pleasing in ways that transcended pure function. Then there are the wooden spears from Schöningen. Found in a German coal mine, these weapons date back at least 300,000 years. They're not sharpened sticks. They're engineered killing machines, each carved from spruce wood, balanced like modern javelins with weight concentrated in the front third for stable flight. The longest measures over 7 feet or 2.1 meters. When researchers tested replicas, they flew true at distances up to 70 feet or 21 meters. Think about that. These weren't contact weapons for desperate close quarters fighting. They were projectiles designed to kill at range, to take down things that could kill you back if you got too close. The Schöningen site tells us exactly what they hunted. The spears were found among butchered horse remains, lots of horses, multiple individuals systematically processed. But horses run fast and kick hard. To bring down several horses requires coordination, planning, communication. You need a hunting party working as a single unit. The same cognitive abilities that enabled coordinated horse hunts, the planning, group tactics, advanced weaponry, work equally well on other targets, even human-shaped ones. However, understanding their capabilities is just the beginning. The real horror lies not in their intelligence, but in how they chose to use it, and the disturbing evidence that hunting humans wasn't a desperate last resort, but a calculated tradition passed down through generations. The most disturbing aspect of Gran Dolina isn't just that early humans ate each other, it's how they chose their victims. In nature, predators target easy prey, the old, sick, or young who've wandered from protection. Basic energy economics, minimum risk for maximum reward. But Gran Dolina breaks this pattern in chilling ways. Yes, victims were young, but not helpless infants or toddlers. These were children and adolescents, mobile, aware, presumably protected by their groups, and they weren't picked off individually across centuries. The TD6 layer represents a relatively brief period, meaning multiple young humans were killed and consumed in what amounts to a prehistoric blink. Dr. Marina Mosquera, who spent years analyzing the remains, offered a hypothesis that crawls under your skin. This could be strategy. If you want to reduce a competing group's future warrior strength, you don't target adults who can fight back effectively. You target their children. It's almost too calculated to contemplate. But the butchery wasn't desperate or haphazard. Stone tools filleted humans with the same efficiency used on horses. Marrow extraction techniques mirrored those applied to deer bones. Processing was thorough. Every scrap of meat removed, long bones systematically broken, skulls carefully opened for brain tissue. This level of complete utilization speaks to expertise. These weren't first-time cannibals fumbling through unfamiliar territory. They knew exactly what they were doing. Even more unsettling, Gran Dolina excavations revealed cut-marked human bones in multiple stratigraphic layers, separated by thousands of years. This wasn't a single desperate band crossing some terrible line during harsh winter. This was practice, tradition, something passed down through generations like toolmaking or fire management. Professor José María Bermúdez de Castro, co-director of the Atapuerca project, summarized it with stark clarity. This was gastronomic cannibalism. They ate their enemies. If we could dismiss this as primitive behavior that died out with ancient species, the story might end here. But the archaeological record reveals a far more disturbing truth. This wasn't just them. It was us too. All the evidence from Gran Dolina paints a stark picture of methodical, calculated cannibalism among early humans. And while this may seem horrifying, it's easy to think of it as something from the distant past. Primitive behavior that eventually faded from human society. Fast forward 800,000 years from Gran Dolina. Location: Goyet Cave, Belgium. Time: 40,000 years ago. The players? Neanderthals, our sister species, so genetically close, we interbred with them. 5 individuals, systematically butchered, cut marks on 99 bone fragments, marrow extraction, the same professional processing seen on reindeer bones from identical layers. But Goyet Neanderthals added a twist that somehow makes everything worse. After extracting meat and marrow, they didn't discard the human bones. They used them. A femur became a napping tool for stone blade production. Tibias were repurposed as retouchers for maintaining cutting edges. Imagine using the leg bone of someone you just consumed to craft tomorrow's hunting tools. It's a level of practical dehumanization that defies comfortable categorization. And Neanderthals weren't alone. At Krapina in Croatia, child remains from 130,000 years ago show identical cut marks. Different cave, same story. But surely Homo sapiens, modern humans with art, music, and complex societies were above this primitive behavior. Gough's Cave in England says otherwise. Dating to just 14,700 years ago, Gough's Cave presents evidence of nutritional cannibalism among fully modern humans. The Magdalenian people didn't just consume human flesh, they turned skulls into drinking cups. The process was deliberate and skilled. After removing facial bones, they carefully shaped crania into bowls, chipping away flakes to create smooth rims. One human radius was even engraved with zigzag patterns, the oldest known engraving on human bone. The craftsmanship is disturbingly precise. These weren't crude, improvised containers. They were carefully manufactured artifacts, shaped with the same attention to detail as stone tools or carved antler points. Someone spent hours creating these macabre vessels, hours handling human remains not as bodies to mourn, but as raw material to carve and craft. So far, we've seen cannibalism practiced by ancient humans, Neanderthals, and even modern humans. Naturally, you might assume these were moments of desperation, where survival outweighed every moral boundary. It's easier to think of survival cannibalism, the kind we understand, even forgive, like airplane crash survivors in the Andes. But archaeological evidence tells a different story. At Gran Dolina, layers containing butchered human children also contain abundant horse, deer, and bovid remains. Climate data shows a relatively mild Mediterranean environment. Plant foods would have been available. This wasn't the depths of an ice age with desperate humans gnawing on anything to survive. Paleo-environmental evidence is particularly damning. Pollen samples show mixed woodland and open grassland, ideal hunting territory. Animal species diversity speaks to rich ecosystems. These weren't people living on starvation's edge. They were successful hunters with multiple food options. The Goyet Neanderthals? Their cave shows evidence of successful reindeer hunts. Lots of them. They weren't starving when they processed their own kind with identical methodology used on those reindeer. Even at Guff's Cave, where climate was admittedly harsher as the last ice age ended, inhabitants had access to diverse food sources. Migratory bird presence suggests seasonal abundance. The careful crafting of skull cups suggests time and energy to spare, not desperate circumstances. Dr. Sylvia Bello, who led Guff's Cave research, was explicit. The evidence suggests Magdalenians were successfully exploiting their environment. There's no indication extreme events triggered this behavior. So if not desperation, what? The answer might be simpler and more disturbing than we want to admit. For these early humans, other humans were simply part of the available protein landscape. Not preferred prey, the risks were higher than hunting horses or gathering plants, but not taboo either, just another option. The calculated nature of Gran Dolina child targeting suggests something darker: strategic cannibalism, eliminating future competitors while they remained manageable. Cold logic we associate with warfare, not prehistory. But maybe that's our mistake. Maybe warfare, or strategic intergroup violence, is older than we thought, older than Homo sapiens itself. Now we face the most uncomfortable question of all. What does this million-year pattern of human-on-human predation tell us about ourselves? And are we really as far removed from our cannibalistic ancestors as we'd like to believe? How do we reconcile the Homo heidelbergensis who left those touching footprints at Terra Amata, adults and toddlers walking together, with the ones who may have systematically hunted human children? How do we process that the same cognitive abilities that let us paint the caves of Lascaux also enabled turning human skulls into serving bowls? The easy path is distance. That was then, this is now. We're civilized. We have laws, ethics, grocery stores. We've grown beyond such horrors. But have we? The same species that created Guff's Cave skull cups went on to create civilization. No new breakthroughs in brainpower were required. No sudden leap in ability. Just the same minds, the same hands, the same capacity for both creation and destruction that H. heidelbergensis possessed 400,000 years ago. Archaeological records force us to confront an uncomfortable possibility. The capacity for seeing other humans as prey isn't an accident of history. It's part of us, an ability that has always been there, waiting for the wrong conditions to bring it out. This isn't pessimism or misanthropy. It's honesty about what stones and bones actually tell us. For over 1 million years, various human species have occasionally hunted and consumed each other. Not constantly, not universally, but persistently enough to leave traces across continents and epochs. The miracle isn't that early humans sometimes ate each other. The miracle is that we never stopped. That somewhere along the line, most human societies developed taboos strong enough to override what was once just another survival strategy. But those taboos are cultural, not biological. They're software, not hardware. And software can be overwritten when conditions become extreme enough. History demonstrates this repeatedly. The bones at Gran Dolina aren't just evidence of ancient atrocity. They're reminders, warnings, maybe, about what humans become capable of when we stop seeing each other as human. And that's only one piece of the nightmare. Because for prehistoric humans, cannibalism was just part of a far darker reality. Predators, starvation, disease, brutal landscapes. Daily life itself was horror on repeat. This is Roaring Echo. Thank you for watching.